special. It is real live music right here in beautiful downtown Knoxville. We're in the old city today at Barley's for the big plate. Feel free to come join us if you like. It's kind of like Christmas because he comes about this time of year every year. And yeah, there's a Christmas theme going on here today for some weird reason. But yeah, it's always a fun time when he comes to see us. Y'all give a great big welcome to Michael Reno Harrell to the big plate, live from Barley's.
Sitting in the drive-thru lane at Wendy's listening to the radio. It's 32 degrees and they're calling for this rain to turn to snow. I got one good wiper blade, a cup of coffee, and 100 miles to go before I feel your loving arms or taste your sweet lips kissing me hello. Well, I'd have been home by now, but the van ran out of gas on 26. The gauge is broken. Yeah, I know you told me that I ought to get it fixed. Got the Appalachian Mountain jet to cross in what they call a wintry mix. So say a prayer for me in this old van, the tires are getting pretty slick. Say a prayer for this old pilgrim out here on the road tonight. And say a prayer for all the children no one to hold them tight. Don't forget about the soldiers and their loved ones who've gone on. And then say a prayer for peace and that we all make it safely home. Well, I made a little money on this trip, sold a few CDs, made some new friends out in Texas, saw some old friends here in Tennessee. I'll admit the snow looks pretty and the headlights shining on the trees. I just hope they get the salt trucks rolling before the asphalt starts to freeze. Say a prayer for this old pilgrim out here on the road tonight. And say a prayer for all the children who have no one to hold them tight. Don't forget about the soldiers and our loved ones who've gone on. And then say a prayer for peace and that we all make it safely home. I say a prayer for peace and that we all make it safely home. Thank you. It's always an interesting struggle to figure out what you're going to open a show with, and the reason I thought I'd do that song about making a living playing music and driving is we left Atlanta at 6 o'clock this morning. Ooh, it was fun. Well, we made it out of Atlanta all right, and then we hit Chattanooga. Knoxville's a breeze, I'll tell you that. It's nice to be back, and it's nice to be here in the company of such good-looking people, especially my favorite disc jockey in the whole world, Miss Red Hickey right there. She's all jewelried up today and looking sharp as normal, I'll do you a song here. I think I've played in 45 states, 44 or 5 states. Anyway, one of my favorite states is the state of Wyoming, because it's as big as North Carolina and South Carolina put together, and they just barely over 500,000 people there. So if you like being by yourself, it's a wonderful place to be. Now, I know a bunch of people out there, and most of them, working people, making a living. Everybody I know in Wyoming has got 3 jobs. They work at a feed store, or maybe they grow alfalfa or sugar beets, or got a cattle operation. But their other 2 jobs is they're a volunteer fireman and a hunting guide. Now, that definition fits a really good friend of ours, an old boy by the name of Mike McClamrock, and he's got a ranch out there. It's out near Lysite. You know where Lysite is, I'm sure. It's right out from Shoshone. Now, the neat thing about him and his wife Kathy's place out there is you go to Shoshone and then hang a right like you're going out to Lysite, and then the first gravel road to the left, you turn there to go to their ranch. It's 42 miles to their house. They're the only house on the road. They're the only house on a road that's 42 miles long. When you go through their gate, you're at the end of the road and in their house. Now, like I say, everybody out there's got 2 jobs. Well, Mike is a volunteer fireman. If your house catches on fire, he'll bring a broom to help you sweep up the ashes. That's about the best he can do. Now, let's see, he's a volunteer fireman, and he's a hunting guide. Now, every once in a while, he'll put him an ad in one of them Outdoor Life magazines or something, and he'll get 4 boys flying into Riverton down there from New Jersey. And he'll put them in his truck, and he'll start hauling them out there to the house. And they would be like, we didn't pack a lunch. How far are we going, But he gets them out there, and they get to hunt and have a big time and see what the world's really like. He said, I hauled 4 of them in there one time from New Jersey, took them to the house, and Kathy fed them supper. And then he said, I'm going to send you boys down to the bunkhouse. I got two double beds down there. He said, you'll bunk up together down there. It's only about 100 feet from the house. He said, I gave him a Coleman lantern and said, okay, I'm going to wake you up at 6 o'clock and we're going to go antelope hunting. Well, them 4 boys took the lantern, and he said, good night, shut the door, and he said, I was sitting in the kitchen taking my boots off, and I looked down there, and the lights never did come on in the bunkhouse. He thought, surely to God, these boys from New Jersey ain't got lost in 100 feet with a light. He said, well, I better go see if I can find them. He said, I opened the door. He said, I about stepped on all 4 of them. They were laying there on their backs looking at the sky. They'd never seen the stars before, But that's the kind of places there are in Wyoming. Now, Michael does have another job. He has a real job. He drives a road grader for the county. This is the truth. He drives a road grader for the county. He grades his driveway for a living. Police car sirens got the neighbors' dogs moaning. Streets full of cars and people all cell-phoning. This city's louder than the whole state of Wyoming, and I can't get no rest because my mind keeps turning west. There's a road out in Wyoming, 40 miles long, and ain't but one house on that road, and that's where I belong. soon as you don't see me here, you'll know where I've gone. Out there where the angels take their rest. My mind keeps turning west. Out there underneath that western sky, you can stand beside the road all day and want a single soul drive by. If I had angels' wings and know just where I'd fly, out there where the angels take their rest. Oh, my mind keeps turning west. Well, I think I'll trade this Cadillac for a horse and saddle. Trade this 20-story job for 40 head of cattle. 2,000 miles of blacktop for 40 miles of gravel. And you can have the rest, because my mind keeps turning west. Thank you very much.
It's Michael Reno Harrell with us here today on the Big Plate, live from Barley's. I don't know how many years I mean, probably somewhere around 25 years now you've been coming to WDVX, I think.
The first time I came, you were still in the camper out there at Fox Hills Campground.
Absolutely. So
that's been over 2 years, I know.
it has been over 2 years for sure. You know, a lot of us we know Michael as a wonderful storyteller and singer, songwriter, the things. During the pandemic, he pulled out a new talent out of wherever it had been hidden for so long, and has started doing his artwork again and selling it on the website there. You can go to the gallery right there on his website and see his works. You do a podcast out there that people can listen to with kind of interesting and not so interesting people.
Yep.
And also, you know, I learned the last time you were here that you used to play in a lot of bluegrass bands here in Knoxville.
I did. I played with Jack Hatfield right there.
Yeah.
Jack's got
You
a
lived
great
to
band
tell the
called True
story.
Blue.
Yep.
They played on here.
They
as a matter of
play
fact.
on here. They do. He's got several bands actually. But so I was gonna ask you. I mean, you do a lot of things other than just music. You lead workshops as well, but what's something you like to do in your spare time that maybe we wouldn't think about? We wouldn't think that's a Michael thing.
Nap. I'm a world-class napper. I like to hang out at the Drexel, North Carolina barber shop. They got a barber there that cuts about 2 heads of hair a week, because once he gets you in the chair, he'll cut half your hair and then he's got you. And then he tells you bad jokes for 2 hours, and then finally he finishes up your hair and leaves. But it's kind of like a
He wants Michael in that chair.
yeah.
You know.
It's a hangout for old people, and I go down there and we swap stories and talk about old stuff. Yeah,
I get it. That's cool.
just hanging out on the.
I was also going to ask you what was the weirdest or oddest gig you've ever done. But after us talking here just a minute ago, I think
Last night was pretty good.
Last
Yeah.
night kind of ranks pretty high up there. Tell the
Well,
folks.
it's the third time I've done it. I'd done a storytelling festival called the Georgia Mountain Storytelling Festival. And this guy came up to me as I came off stage, and he had little wire rim glasses and a white beard and, and a red vest on, and I just stuck my hand out and said, "Hey, Santa." And he handed me his card. His name was Santa Rick. And he said, "I've got to have you." And I said, "For what?" He said, "I teach people how to be professional Santa Clauses." And he has this thing called the American Society for Real Beard Santas. And his class is called, it's a weekend long thing. It started last night. It's called the Northern Lights Santa Academy. And the audience was 160 people dressed like Santa Claus, and their wives dressed like Mrs. Claus. And everywhere you looked, you saw the same thing. It was kind of dizzying, actually. These are serious people.
Santa showed up for breakfast in his Santa pajamas.
Oh yeah. Oh, they don't come out of character or costume. They stay Santa all weekend. It's crazy.
That's pretty crazy. Yeah, for real. Well, Michael's, a little bit more laid back and realistic in his storytelling, not that crazy and bizarre. But do you get a lot of your stories from hanging out there at the barber shop? Or?
Well, they'd spur memories, and most of us who travel nationally and tell stories at storytelling festivals or whatever events, we deal in a lot of nostalgia. It's a lot of coming of age stuff, It's like the guys at the Drexel Barbershop. We're talking now. When you go out there in California and talk about us, do they know what you're talking about? I said, boys, a bicycle wreck's a bicycle wreck anywhere, So, yeah, it.
It might be, but that doesn't mean they can understand what you're talking
Well,
about.
I enunciate differently when I go to California.
Gotcha.
But
Well,
I can talk like you here.
You certainly can. We all know, Michael's got roots here over in East Tennessee, and he heads over here about this time every year to perform at the Rose Center, which he'll be at tomorrow. And there's quite a few gigs on that schedule, and you can find the complete schedule by visiting michaelreno.com. There's merch available. Bluebirds and Crows, is that the current one?
There's one, yeah, that one's there.
And
There's all kind of stuff.
And those songs and stories ones, it's all kinds of good merch over there. Feel free to shake and howdy with them afterwards and thank them for being here today, y'all. It's Michael Reno Harrell on the big plate live from Barley's.
In June, I just turned 76 years old, and it scared me to death. Anyway, I wrote myself a birthday song. My knees both pop like pistol shots. My face has lines and my hands have spots, and my eyebrows look like some old witch's broom. I sip and sure instead of wine. 4:30's now my supper time. Remind me why I came into this room. I got receding hair, I got receding gums. My doctor can't be 21. When did my favorite snack become a prune? Long underwear, that's how I roll. I once was cool, now I'm just cold. Remind me why I came into this room. Getting old's not for the faint of heart. My resume may soon include greeter at Walmart. Well, I may not have a hip tattoo, but my hip replacement scar is cool. Remind me why I came into this room. My nose is red and my ears are hairy. My cholesterol count is downright scary. I recall when movies came with a cartoon. My sugar's high, my blood pressure's soaring, my back is screaming and my ears are roaring. Remind me why I came into this room. Getting old's not for the faint of heart. You see, now my wife don't trust my driving, and I don't trust a fart. Well, it may sound crude, but I could read an entire novel while I pee. Remind me why I came into this room. But you're gonna need to speak up to remind me why I came into this room. I grew up in a time where all my relatives, all my uncles, all had the same thing on their blue jeans. They had right there was like a place where their blue jeans were worn just almost white. And it was from carrying a WDVX case pocket knife. I got my granddaddy's pocket knife and a good dry stick of Tennessee white pine. For when the world is sitting heavy on my shoulders like it does from time to time. And if I just wind up with shavings on my shoes, that'll be just fine. 'Cause then the problems of my world are nothing more than curls of Tennessee white pine. I can feel his steady hand here on the staghorn handles of his favorite tool. He taught me there's a lesson in the blade and what it means to break the rules. He said there's a right way and a wrong way, and it'll catch you if you try and cross the line. But there are a lot of lessons to be learned from pocket knives and Tennessee white pine. You see this angry looking scar here? 7 stitches on the pad of my left thumb. It's like a notch carved in the door frame to my brain to remind me that I'm dumb. Still I'll drive 1,000 miles to keep from flying on some damned airline. So I can bring my pocket knife and a good dry stick of Tennessee white pine. You need to rub it on a whetstone every day. Use a drop of 3-in-1. You'll know it's right if you can shave the hair off of your arm when you get done. This old WDVX case pocket knife is like a touchstone to my favorite memories. It's a direct line from here to when I was a boy back there in Tennessee. And like I say, most every day I find it good to spend a little time with my granddaddy's pocket knife and a good dry stick of Tennessee white pine. Like I say, most every day I find it good to spend a little time with my granddaddy's pocket knife and a good dry stick of Tennessee white pine.
It's Michael Reno Harrell
Thank
with
you.
us here today on the Big Plate, live from Barley's. Quickly, I just need to mention support for the Blue Plate special comes from Barley's and home of the Big Plate. Next Friday, Wasted Major will be here with us on the Big Plate. You can find more information about that by visiting our website at WDVX.com. Additional support comes from Visit Knoxville and the Senior Financial Group, your neighborhood Medicare partner for more than 30 years. Senior Financial Group's been on a mission to make Medicare more affordable. Information and assistance available at sfgmedicare.com and 865-777-0153. Sorry, I just had to get that out of the way.
Well, we needed to do that.
We needed to do it. It's done. It's Michael Reno Harrell on the Big Plate, live from Barley's.
Red Hickey. Let's see. Tell you a little story. My dad and my mom are both from North Carolina. Probably more information than you require, but I was conceived in North Carolina and born in Tennessee. So I'm bilingual. My mother's from Buncombe County, and everybody in America, no matter where I travel, if I tell people my mother's from Buncombe County, they all know where it is because that's where Asheville is, and all their children live there now. So everybody knows where that is. But my dad's from Mitchell County, and hardly anybody away from North Carolina knows where Mitchell County is. So I said, well, you probably heard of Mount Mitchell, the tallest mountain east of the Rockies, and people go, oh yeah, now we know where you're talking about. I said, well, not really. That's not in Mitchell County. I just thought I'd mention it. But my dad's father had a little farm that he rented up there in Mitchell County. And in 1925, a fellow was down at the store at Beuladine passing out pamphlets that said if you would leave the mountains and come to Spartanburg, South Carolina and go to work in a cotton mill, that they would rent you a house for $3 a month that had light bulbs in it. I remember asking my granddad, I said, why did that interest you so much? He said, hell, son, I hadn't even seen a picture of a light bulb, just heard of them. And the bonus, the thing that the real incentive to get you to go down there was they would buy your train ticket down there, your wife a train ticket, all your children train tickets to Spartanburg, and your cow a train ticket to Spartanburg. And Granddaddy was like, well, Bessie's never seen a town, so they took her down there. And he went to work in the cotton mill. Well, now, my dad grew up and became a young man and decided that, all there was to do was work in the cotton mill. And so he went to work in the cotton mill. He lasted about 6 weeks. And he and his dad were walking home one evening after a shift. And my dad looked at his dad and he said, Dad, I'm not going to work my life in a cotton mill. I'm going to go find something better. And Granddaddy said, go do it. He said, that's how we got here. We were looking for something better. So my dad went on and did great things in his life. Now, his younger brother was 2 years younger than he was. And about the time he graduated high school, he told his dad, he said, Dad, I'm not going to work anywhere And he never did. He became a musician. He had from the time he was about a junior in high school, he had his own radio in Spartanburg on WSPA radio right down there on the main street. And back then, prime time on the radio would be about right now, from noon to 1 o'clock, because that's when all the farm families came in from the fields to have their big meal of the day, and then they would turn on the old battery radio for that hour and listen to what was going on, get a little news and listen to some music before they had to go back out in that South Carolina sun. And, of course, all the mill workers got off lunch, and they all went out in their cars and ate their lunch and smoked cigarettes and listened to the radio in somebody's car. Well, that was prime time, and his slot was Monday through Friday from 12:15 till 12:30. You could buy time on the radio at 15-minute segments like that. Well, he would go on and do about 3 shows and try to sell some souvenir, photographs and songbooks and tell everybody which high school gymnasium he was going to be playing in that Saturday night. Well, right down the street from there was the big Civic Center. And they had big music acts that came through there on Friday nights. Of course, Saturday night was a big night, and that was wrestling. But Friday night they had music acts, and they were from all over. And a lot of times they would stop by the radio station before they did their show that Friday night and see if they could do what all of us do right here at WDVX when we're traveling through. Stop, have an interview, and tell people where you're going to be playing that night. So there were a lot of famous acts that came through there on Friday. And Bruce came walking in one Friday, and the station manager was standing over there talking to 2 old boys. One of them was kind of short, and the other one a big, tall guy. They had a mandolin case and a guitar case sitting there with them. And the station manager said, "Bruce, come here. I want you to meet these boys." He said, "They're playing at the Civic Center tonight, and I'd like for you to let them do a song on your show." And Bruce was always happy to do it because people would tune in to see who he might have on the show. So the station manager said, "Bruce Harrell, I'd like for you to meet these boys right here. These are brothers. They call themselves Charlie and Ira Leuven." Now, I can tell that story in other places, but right here people know who I'm talking about, Charlie and Ira Leuven. Well, they did a show, one of the gospel songs they'd written on his program, and at the end of the day, end of the show, brother, he said, "Good Lord, you guys are great. Did you write that song?" "Yeah, we wrote that. We do mostly songs that we've written." He said, "Ooh, you guys are going to be famous one of these days. I just know you are. You are great." He said, "Where are you headed from here?" And they said, "Well, we're going to play tonight, and then we've got a slot on a show in Knoxville, Tennessee on Gay Street called the Midday Merry-Go-Round." I'm preaching to the choir. It's wonderful. And Bruce said, "Oh," he said, "that's like Wheeling Jamboree in Wheeling, Virginia, or the Chicago Barn Dance, or down there in Louisiana, the Louisiana Hayride. These are all like almost unofficial farm teams for the Grand Ole Opry." He said, "You get on the Midday Merry-Go-Round," he said, "I bet you in no time at all you guys will get a guest shot on the Grand Ole Opry, and the next thing you know, you guys will be stars of the Grand Ole Opry." And Charlie said, "Well, that sounds good." He said, "But we're worried about going over to Knoxville." And Bruce said, "Why in the world do you think you got anything to worry about?" They said, "Well, it ain't our music we're worried about. The fella that hired us to come over there and be on the show Monday through Friday, when he hired us, we had a bass player. And when we told that boy that we were going to move to Knoxville, Tennessee, he had just gotten married, and he said, 'I ain't leaving.' So we're going over there, not the act that he booked. We don't have an upright bass player. You don't know anybody that plays upright bass, do you?" And my Uncle Bruce said, "Well, I don't know. Let me think." He said, "What would it pay?" And Charlie said, "Well, it pays $125 a week in a room." And Bruce said, "You know, the bass is actually my first instrument." Well, you know how big a lie that was, because anybody that ever picked up an upright bass, that's work, and he wasn't going to work, right? They said, "You wouldn't be interested in the job, would you?" And he said, "I think I would." And Ira said, "Well, Saturday morning, if you're at the hotel with your upright bass, you've got the job." Because he had played 2 or 3 songs, and anybody can play a guitar, can probably figure out the upright bass pretty easy, 1-5, 1-5. So he said, "You meet us in the morning before we leave over at the hotel, you got the job." So Uncle Bruce went out and did whatever little show he was going to do that night, and on the way home, he stopped at a buddy's house there in the Mill Village that played upright bass. He knocked on the door, and Leroy came to the door, and he said, "Hey, Leroy." He said, "Well, hey, Bruce, what are you doing out at this hour of the night?" He said, "Oh, I just finished up a show." He said, "But I need a favor." And Leroy said, "Well, what is it?" He said, "Could I borrow your upright bass?" He said, "Well, I guess. What do you need it for?" He said, "I got something I got to do with it in the morning." He said, "Well, yeah, I reckon it'd be all right if you borrowed it. Will you bring it back just as soon as you're through with it, won't you?" And Bruce said, "I promise you, I'll bring it back as soon as I'm through with it." He brought it back 36 years later. Now, Bruce went down, he came down here with the Lubins, and they played down here, and then the next thing you know, sure enough, they got a shot on the Opry, and they hired him that night. And Bruce was off and running. Stars of the Grand Ole Opry. I said, "Ooh, that must have been glamorous back then." He said, "Oh, it was." He said, "I'd go sometimes 4 days without taking my shoes off." They would leave the Opry about 3 o'clock in the morning. There was a Chinese laundry that would stay open late because those boys would come rolling into town half the Saturday nights of the year to play for Union Scale at the Opry. And they'd drop their clothes off and pick them up on the way out of town. And they would drive from the Opry to Slidell, Louisiana, and play a gospel show on Sunday morning. And then they'd drive to somewhere in Ohio and play a show on Monday. And then they'd drive out to Arizona and play a show. And they're just all over. I said, "Where did you sleep?" He said, "On each other." 3 of them in the back seat of the car. He said, "Every once in a while we'd say, 'All right, y'all lean the other way for a while. You're getting lumpy looking on that one side.'" Well, he did that for a long time, and then you all know about the back door of the Ryman down there. If you come out the stage door of the Ryman, there's an alleyway there, and there's a little path that leads right across that alleyway into the back door of Tootsie's Orchid Lounge. If you watch The Coal Miner's Daughter, you know what I'm talking about. That's where the Opry stars hung out between sets in there, telling lies and drinking Kool-Aid. And anyway, he fell in with this old boy from West Virginia by the name of Little Jimmy Dickens. And Jimmy hired him away, and he played with Jimmy for many years on the road. And then he decided that's enough of it, and he decided he's going to retire. And guess where he picked to retire? Jefferson City, Tennessee. Because he had decided he was going to become a full-time fisherman and heard about these TVA lakes. He'd seen them his whole life. And he said, "That's where I need to be." He was going to become a full-time crappie fisherman. Oh, Lord, he was crazy about it. And he could cook, too. So every time, about February, wherever I was, I'd get a call from him, and he'd say, "Mikey," he said, "crappie fishing season's fixing to start up. Are you going to be here?" And I said, "I'll be there for at least the opening day." And so wherever I was, I'd head for Jefferson City, Tennessee, Cherokee Lake. And the first thing we'd do is we'd have supper about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because we were going to go to bed at 4 o'clock because we had to be up before the fish woke up. I'm going fishing in the morning, getting up before daylight, gonna go fishing in the morning, so it's time to say goodnight. Good night. I got some red worms from the garden. I got the John boat from the shed. gotta wash these supper dishes and get myself to bed. I'm going fishing in the morning, getting up before daylight gonna go. Fishing in the morning, so it's time to say good night. Good night. Can't fall asleep out on the water. Might miss some crappie on the line. Hold your mouth right and watch that bobber. Pretty soon you'll smell them crappie frying. I got my skillet greased and ready. I got my favorite fishing pole. I gotta get my 40 winks in before I get down to that old fishing hole. I'm going fishing in the morning, getting up before daylight gonna go. Fishing in the morning, so it's time to say good night. Good night. Fishing in the morning, good night. I don't know how many of you fellas out there were mama's boys, but all of us were. Us four brothers, we'd fight over our mother's attention. She was the greatest mom in the world. So I want to do you a mama song. This is for all the mamas, even the mean ones. Mama had a clothespin between her teeth. She was reaching for the corner of a twin bed sheet. A whole week's laundry on the line when she heard the doorbell chime. It was the Avon lady, Leanne Brewer, bringing Mama's Avon order to her. Had lipstick and a little perfume, then coffee in the living room. It made Mama's day, little things like that. All it took was a Tupperware bowl or a Rubbermaid placemat. She'd drive to the Woolworth 5 and dime just to ride the escalator, and kept a half a gallon of peach ice cream in our old Kelvinator. Well, Daddy shined up his cowboy boots and Mama pressed Daddy's Sunday suit when once a year they'd go out to eat for Mama's birthday treat. Well, they'd drive the truck across the county line, have T-bone steak and store-bought wine, dance till the Moose Lodge locked the door, and get home about 4:30. It made Mama's day, little things like that. All it took was a new hairdo and a cute little pillbox hat. She'd drive to the Woolworth 5 and dime just to ride the escalator, and kept a half a gallon of peach ice cream in our old Kelvinator. And then Mama got sick with a female matter, so Daddy sat by her and he'd look right at her, then he'd sneak out back and smoke a cigarette, praying underneath his breath. Well, she couldn't do nothing 'cause the doc wouldn't let her, so Grandma stayed till Mama got better. We all chipped in and Daddy bought flowers, and it made Mama grin for hours. It made Mama's Day, little things like that. All it took was her favorite book and her blue-eyed Siamese cat. She'd drive to the Woolworth 5 and dime just to ride the escalator, and kept a half a gallon of peach ice cream in our old Kelvinator. Yeah, we always had some peach ice cream in our old Kelvinator. Thank you, Mama, for all the ice cream and all the love.
Michael Reno Harrell with us here today on the Big Plate live from Barley's. We've got time for one more here today, but before he does that, I want to remind everybody we're going to do this all over again next week. A Wasted Major will be here with us next Friday on the Big Plate. Coming up tomorrow on the Blue Plate Special, we'll be back at Visit Knoxville with Philip Lamons and Los Swamp Monsters. You can always find out who's headed in our direction by visiting our website there at WDVX.com. Of course, we have our love bucket down here in front for Michael. A little love in the bucket. Well, get him on up there.
Candy, it doesn't matter.
Right now, you're not going to get to Morristown very quick. So we got to fix that. He'll be at the Rose Center tomorrow there in Morristown, and you can find more information about where he's headed by visiting michaelreno.com. You can see the boss over here, Miss Jones, at the merch table, and there's all kinds of merch. You got your book there today?
Yeah,
you got your book? 2 books.
We got 2 books.
Couple of books. I left author off of the
I became an
list
author
of
when
stuff.
they invented spell check. Then people could go, oh, that's what he was trying to say.
Still, spell check doesn't understand our accent very
No,
well, does it? So, yeah, certainly shaking howdy with Michael after the show and thank him for being here with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Red.
It's always fun having you all here.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, everybody.
We-
My favorite radio station.
Yay.
K
We
Cadillac,
love you.
ladies and gentlemen.
Y'all, we're going to get one last tune from Michael Reno Harrell, y'all.
She walked into the Greyhound station in Syracuse, New York, laid $40 on the counter and set her suitcase on the floor. And the man said, "Can I help you?" And she said, "All I want to know is I've got $40. How far south will that much go?" And he said, "Well, little lady, it looks like you're in luck, 'cause you can ride to South Carolina for under $40. And he pointed to a poster that said "Special of the Week, $39.95 one way to Myrtle Beach." And so she bought herself a ticket, turned to walk away, and she heard the man behind the ticket counter say, "Ma'am, you forgot your change. This 5 cents belongs to you." She said, "When you're as broke as I am, what's a nickel gonna do?" And he said, "This nickel ain't worth nothing for all that it'll buy. But with it you can stand up straight and look folks in the eye. 'Cause if you never lose this nickel, you never will be broke. And you'll never be a loser if you never do lose hope." Well, she rolled across New York and down the Jersey Pike, across Delaware, Virginia, and North Carolina in the night, rolled down Highway 17 through Little River and OD, and the sun was coming up when she got to Myrtle Beach. And with her nickel in her pocket and her suitcase in her hand, She walked down to the pavilion, looked at the water and the sand, and the sunlight on the seagulls and the people on the pier, and the pelicans and the porpoises, and she breathed that ocean air. Her past just blew away on that cool Atlantic breeze, and for the first time in a long time, she felt at ease. She called her mom, Colette, from a pay phone that first day, and her mom said, "How you doing, hon?" And she said, "Mom, I'm okay. Ain't got much, but it's enough. And I'll come out ahead." And she held on to her nickel. And to herself she said, "This nickel ain't worth nothing for all that it'll buy. But with it I can stand up straight and look folks in the eye. 'Cause if I never lose this nickel, I never will be broke. And I'll never be a loser if I never do lose hope." Well, she found a place in Surfside Beach early that first year, waited tables in Merle's Inlet, and called bingo on the pier. Made a lot of friends and somehow made the rent. The money came real hard, but it sure was easy spent. And by the first part of September, all her friends had gone. But she didn't want to leave. She decided she'd stay on. She worked part-time through December at a family pantry store. They laid her off on Christmas Eve. They didn't need her anymore. So she drew her unemployment, $40 a week, while her rent was $100 a month. Still she had to eat, and sometimes it came right down to that nickel laying there, and she held it tight. She'd recite those words just like a prayer. "This nickel ain't worth nothing for all that it'll buy. But with it I can stand up straight and look folks in the eye. 'Cause if I never lose this nickel, I never will be broke. And I'll never be a loser if I never do lose hope." Well, 24 years later, on a very special day, a bride walked down an aisle and her dad gave her away. And she wore a golden locket that her mom had given her. And inside it was that nickel. And on the outside were the words, "This nickel ain't worth nothing for all that it'll buy. But you can stand up straight and look folks in the eye. 'Cause if you never lose this nickel, you never will be broke. And you'll never be a loser if you never do lose hope." Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Y'all are wonderful. Thank you, WDVX.
Michael Reno Harrell, y'all.
Thank you so much. We'll see you next year, hopefully. Thank you. Thank you.
Join us again next time for more real live music on the Blue Plate Special.